Live. This is the place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual. I share my asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that great big subscribe button right here, right now. Please hit that bell icon so you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. In a moment, we're going to be discussing sexual intimacy needs, so sexual physical intimacy needs versus asexual physical intimacy needs. What's the difference? Is it going to work in an asexual / sexual relationship? And how do we even navigate this? So if you didn't know who I am, if you're new to this channel, I'm Sandra Bellamy, author of this awesome Asexual Perspectives 47 Asexual Stories book. This is real life asexual stories. I'm also the author of Fibromyalgia Self-Help Handbook. This is how to manage fibromyalgia to have less pain, more energy, and feel happy like a superhero rock star. But it's also a good book if you just like reading an autobiographical account that is done in superhero style. It's really good. And if you want to reduce your pain with anxiety and depression as well, it's a really good book. So, cracking on with today's show then is, yes, this topic is very interesting. It's sexual physical intimacy needs versus asexual physical intimacy needs. So, I think this is really important. So, as you know, I like Indian guys. I do have a friend in the UK who's Indian who likes me more than a friend. I like him more than a friend. But we can't be in a relationship because our physical intimacy needs are very different. So, as a sexual person, he values sex as a priority in a relationship, as in he cannot be without sex in a relationship. And I cannot have sex in a relationship because I'm a sex repulsed asexual. So we couldn't be in a relationship, which is a little bit sad when you both have feelings for each other. And yeah, at one point he said, well, I would be in a relationship with you if it wasn't for the fact we're different sexualities. And that kind of does hurt, you know. But he's still a really nice person. I don't believe he's a horrible person. But basically he couldn't be faithful. He has told me that. So, you know, that's a bit upsetting. But at the end of the day, obviously he's not the right guy for me. But it's very, very difficult when you have strong feelings for someone. You know, and I have physical intimacy needs as well. So many asexuals, those that lack sexual attraction, and predominantly don't want sex. A lot of asexuals, they don't obviously want the sex. I have, however, met some guys, a couple of guys on the more sexual end of the asexual spectrum. So great asexuals, those that do experience sexual attraction but only in limited rare specific circumstances, or they do experience it but not enough to want to act on it. That category of asexuals. I met two of the guys I met who were in that category. Both wanted to try sex out in a relationship. They did not want to die a virgin. And so that was quite shocking for me, that two asexual guys had to have sex in a relationship at some point. Otherwise, they just couldn't be in it. And so I found that very difficult. I'm like, oh my God, you know, like, what's the difference between dating them then, or being in a relationship with them, and a sexual guy, right? So, you know, but even so, I don't think those asexual guys would need it a lot of the time, do you know what I mean? Whereas sexual guys tend to need sex every week, like several times a week usually, in my personal experience. But with my ex, it was, you know, my last long-term ex, I mean, sometimes we didn't do that for 2 or 3 months, but that is not what I call normal behaviour, right? And so guess that's why I stayed with him so long, even though he's abusive in other ways, but not in those ways. And for me, as an asexual person, I tend to have different physical needs, intimacy needs, to what a lot of asexuals have. A lot of asexuals have a very, very deep physical need for cuddling. A lot of asexuals' intimacy needs, physical intimacy needs, is cuddling. They just absolutely love cuddling. I really am just not into cuddling as much, right? I'm really into kissing. And so for me, it's really hard, because the way I like to kiss, as I've described before on this channel, is sexual behaviour. And it just means that most asexual heteromantic guys, because I'm heteromantic, we've just kind of been turned off by that. And, you know, it'd be kind of like, oh, it's too much kissing. You know, I'm not interested in that, and you know, in doing that much. And so it's find it very, very hard to get a balance. I really do. And for me, you know, like I kind of don't match other asexuals' physical needs, because a lot of asexuals, they need some touching, you know. They have a strong desire to touch the body in some way, even if it's only an essential way. They don't usually mind sharing a bed together. They don't usually mind being naked, you know, getting undressed in front of each other, because in general, asexuals don't need sex. So when they see the naked body, it's not like, woohoo, I want to bang you now, you know, I want to have sex with you. It's the fact that, you know, they don't need that sex. So for asexuals who see other asexuals naked, for them it's no big deal, as in it's not really what's on their mind. It's just kind of like, oh, that's a body there, that person's just like stripping off, it's just normal, right? But if a sexual person sees that, a sexual person will usually get turned on by it and will usually want sex. So having like a asexual person, a sexual person, unless the asexual is sex positive, in my opinion, just doesn't work, because there are a few asexuals that I've known of, though, who do have sexual partners who do not have sex with them and who respects their boundaries and needs. But in general, many of the sexual guys, they just couldn't handle being intimate without wanting sex. You know, like if I kiss a sexual guy, usually the sexual guy wants sex with me within 5 minutes of knowing me, or 5 minutes of kissing me, you know. And so it's very, you know, it's very difficult, because, you know, I'm not interested in that, you know. And, you know, I just can't do that anymore. I just, like, even in the past, I didn't do it. I did it probably a lot in comparison to some asexuals who haven't had much experience of that. But then I didn't do it a lot in comparison to, like, the regular sexual people who are having sex several times a week. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, like, very difficult, I think, if you're an asexual and sexual, to get your needs met together, because a lot of sexuals, they require sex, usually, in my experience, on average about at least 3 times a week. Sometimes they want it 4, sometimes they want it every day. Like when my ex was around, he pretty much tried to instigate it every time I saw him, but we didn't live together. Well, we lived together at one point for 6 months, but you know, it's kind of like, unless you're really tired, that person would usually like start touching you and then kissing you and instigating sex. It kind of, you know, like, sexuals don't tend to separate kissing from sex, and they don't tend to separate touching really from sex. It's kind of like that's always the end goal for them. But if you can't do that, some of them are okay with touching, you know. And so it's just like kind of really weird. In terms of physical intimacy needs of asexuals, like I said, cuddling, hugging would be more like a friendship thing. But, you know, some asexuals say hugging rather than cuddling. Some asexuals might have, like, you know, need their arms stroked, their hair stroked, you know, loving gestures like that. So if they're very sensual, they might still need like an arm rub or a back rub. They might still need a face stroke. Some asexuals prefer to kiss on the hands and the arms, and maybe just a tiny peck on the lips. You know, and you know, this is like physical intimacy, but you know, like, sexuals tend to prioritize sex in a relationship, whereas asexuals tend to prioritize love and companionship and bestest friendship and soulmateship, if you know what I mean. What I think is that's why I think it's difficult to get a real deep connection with a sexual person, because there's always this sexual barrier up, you know. However, for me, I do understand sexuals in the sense that they really need sex, some of them, and can't live without it. And I couldn't be in a relationship where I'm not kissing the guy, because I personally, if a guy didn't kiss me very much, I'd feel like I was deprived of kissing. I'd feel like I was deprived of that intimacy. I would feel like I was kind of caged up and not being my true authentic self, and not fully releasing my kissing needs, if you know what I mean. So that's, I guess, how I can relate to sexuals really needing sex as part of a relationship, when I really need kissing. as part of a relationship. Lots of asexuals don't need kissing like I do. I need it like it's a basic need in a relationship in terms of physical intimacy for me. I wouldn't cheat if the guy didn't kiss me much, but I would be really upset, and I don't know if I'd have to split up with him over it. Possibly I would, because I couldn't spend my whole life going out many kisses. To me, it would just be like I was kind of stifling myself, kind of shutting off my asexiness, kind of like repressing myself, and kind of like being an old woman, really. And it's like not really very healthy for me, you know. So you know, physical intimacy needs for asexuals as well might even be stuff like sharing hobbies and interests, working on projects together, baking together, knitting together. You know, like physical intimacy for asexuals is not, you know, necessarily even around the body. It can be physical intimacy needs like physically doing a project together, physically traveling together, physically being in the same space as each other, physically sharing a bed with each other, you know. And but you know, like going, for example, on a, you know, going on a hike together, that might be an asexual's physical intimacy, because they see intimacy in a non-sexual way, whereas sexuals would most likely see physical intimacy as anything to do with touching, kissing, caressing, cuddling, sex. But it would always be like, even if they're cuddling, a sexual person will usually cuddle the person, like if a sexual guy is cuddling a female girl, usually they'll cuddle and touch their breasts and stuff. So it's very different with asexuals, you know. Like a lot of asexuals would not be focused so much on that type of thing, whereas sexuals focus much more on the body parts, you know, the genitalia, the boobs and all that type of thing, you know. I'm not saying this is true for every asexual. The ones on the more grey end of the asexual spectrum, they definitely, in my experience, usually need a lot more body touching, a lot more touching all over the woman's chest and all that type of thing, right? But like I said, for asexuals, it could be like we're sharing a hobby and an interest. You could be doing horse riding together, and that could be physical intimacy without being sexual, you know. And you know, like even like going on a day trip together or something, you know, where you're doing physical exertion activities together. But intimacy needs without even being physical for asexuals can just be sharing secrets, you know. And I think that's one of the most intimate things to do in any relationship, whatever sexual orientation you are, is to actually share secrets, you know, because it does bring you closer together. It brings you really, really close together when you share secrets, you share special moments, you kind of reserve some of what you talk about, especially for your partner. You really, you know, like you really care about them and you want them to be with you in their life, you know. And I just think that, you know, like for physical intimacy needs with sexuals, it's all about basing it around sex and the body and, you know, sexual feelings, sexual touching. It just is based on sex and sexual stuff, to be honest. And so it can be really difficult if you're trying to get a match between the both types of sexual orientations. It can be virtually impossible to get a good match a lot of the time because it's very different needs. There are some sexuals that do have a low sex drive, but that doesn't mean to say they don't want other touching and things like that. So I think you've just got to really talk to the person who you're interested in dating or being in a relationship with and have very open, honest conversations, especially if you're an asexual person who's with a sexual person. If the sexual person says they could be without sex and be with you, could they still be monogamous if you want them to be monogamous? Like, or would they have sex with other people? You know, it needs to be discussed. And if you're an asexual person who's sex neutral or sex positive, you know, like if you're willing to have a sex relationship, like how much would you be prepared to do that? How many times a week? What would make you feel comfortable? What would make you feel uncomfortable? You know, so, you know, I just think that all should be talked about, discussed, and kind of even negotiated at the beginning of a relationship. You don't want to get partway into a relationship, be really emotionally attached to each other, and then realise that, oh my God, you're just not going to be compatible long term, because it'll break your hearts, you know. But you know, you've got to understand that people have different needs, and you know, we are wired differently. Asexuals are very much wired to not naturally know what to do in sex, and not naturally know how to have sex, and not naturally be sex minded, whereas sexuals are geared towards having sex at the first and foremost part of their mind a lot of the time, having that be at their forefront of their mind when they're looking for a potential relationship. Whereas an asexual person, like, I'm looking for things that this person got things in common with me. Like, I started talking to an asexual British guy in the last like 24 hours. He seems quite a nice person, but he's so like talks about his looks all the time and what do I think of his looks. So we haven't really talked about much else. Not really, a little bit, but you know what I mean? It's like he hasn't really asked me that many questions about myself. And it's like, if you're really interested in someone, you'd ask them questions about yourself. I've been doing a lot of the asking about him. It's nice, I want to know about him. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, if a person's just focused on what they look like and how good I think they look and stuff like that, it's kind of like a bit off-putting, you know, because it's like, is that all we're going to talk about, your looks? Like, what about my looks for a start? But I don't really need reassurance all the time like that. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to be told continuously that I look good. But, you know, because I'm confident in my looks anyway. But, you know, it's a shame because he seemed quite a nice person. There would possibly be some potential there for a relationship. You know, and he isn't bad looking for a British guy, but, you know, I'm into Indian guys predominantly. That's what I want, a nice Indian guy for me. But, you know, I tend to get more attracted to, you know, like, I don't get instantly attracted to British guys to the same extent as asexual Indian guys or any Indian guys, you know. And for me, like, looks is really, you know, like, in terms of looks, I like the Indian look, right? But in terms of British guys, I tend to fall in love with them or have feelings for them or have love feelings for them because their personality changes their look for me. Like, even if I don't find a British guy as good looking, through talking to him, I can get really attracted to him aesthetically. The more I know his personality, the more closer I feel to him in personality. Whereas foreign guys, like particularly Indian, clean shaven, I could just go up and kiss just like that and have physical intimacy almost straight away. Which with British guys, it's usually a bit longer than that because it's kind of like aesthetically, I'm not as attracted to them, and also their aura's not the same, and I just like, it's just once I've got to know their personality more, that's when I start becoming really much more aesthetically attracted to them. So even if I didn't find a British guy so aesthetically attractively in the beginning, once he's talked to me quite a bit and I have things in common or share a bond with him and stuff like that, that's when I start finding much more attractive. It can happen quite rapidly as well, but it's kind of like, I think I'm a bit demi-romantic when it comes to British guys, whereas I'm more, you know, whereas where everyone else in terms of foreign guys, I just straight away have instant attraction for them, aesthetically and usually romantically as well. So for me, you know, physical intimacy needs for me is definitely kissing. I need a lot of cuddling. Well, a lot more kissing than cuddling, but holding hands is very important to me. I need a lot of public displays of affection. I cannot be in a relationship with someone who hides me away like a caged animal and will only kiss me behind closed doors. I mean, I hate all that type of thing. I know some people love that. They hate being kissed in public. I'm the opposite. Right, so for me, physical intimacy needs, I'd like to sit on the guy's lap, in between his legs, cuddle him, kiss him, have physical intimacy wherever I go, pretty much like fingers intertwined when you're holding hands and all that. So I like to physically be touching the guy, but not in sexual places, just like on the arm, particularly holding his hand, kissing him, stroking his cheeks, on his face, and, you know, hair and stuff like that. So I like a lot of touching, but in a upper body way, particularly the head and the hands, holding hands, like that's electric to me. So those are kind of like the physical intimacy needs I have. And also, you know, in terms of needs that aren't even to do with touching. Physical intimacy needs are like connection of the mind. Like, do you connect in the mind? Do you understand each other on a mindset level, on a deep wisdom level? That's what, I like. I like an intelligent guy. If a guy is saying the same thing like a robot all the time, it just doesn't work for me. I just don't feel close to him. I feel like separated and disconnected from him, And so I really hope that every asexual watching this finds a suitable partner for them, and that's what they're looking for. And I just wish there was more sexuals who didn't need the sex. But, I do need kissing in a relationship, so I do understand it from that point of view. Asexuals kind of base their relationship life around sex and around sexual acts and around, touching and stuff like that. It's kind of like part of who they are, I guess. And I think if it's a sex repulsed asexual, it can be really difficult, because you can think, like, why can't they just love me without sex? Why is sex such a big deal? Because at the end of the day, bodies change. They could end up marrying someone, be in a relationship with someone who got disabled and couldn't have sex anymore. What they're going to do then? Are they going to cheat on them then? You know what I mean? It's kind of like really just opens up a whole can of worms into like the possibilities of what could go wrong in the relationship or with that person, so they couldn't actually have sex. It's like, well, then what are you going to do? Like I said, if a person couldn't kiss me, I wouldn't like go and be unfaithful to them, but I'd have to see if I could still be with them or not, or adapt to less kissing, I guess. But, for me, I guess it's going to be harder because I like kissing for up to 3 hours. I think most guys can't even do an hour. Most guys can't even do 5 minutes, but there you go. But sexual guys are much more into kissing than asexual guys. I mean, but for sexual guys, it's just a prequel to sex, and I don't want that. So when you come across someone who you think might be suitable for a relationship, you have to have really open, honest discussions. You have to set boundaries, be assertive, and you have to really understand, can it work or not? And you have to understand why you are interacting with them. Are you just wanting to like have some need met for a short term, or are you looking to get the long term needs met? Do you love this person? Do you not love this person? How do you feel about each other? All this type of thing. And could you make the relationship work? Could you compromise? Could the sexual person have less sex per week with you, but you be willing to do it a little bit? But if you're a sex repulsed asexual, usually you'd hate sex and you do not want to do that, and therefore you should not do anything you don't want to do, and especially not just to keep any sexual person in a relationship. It's not healthy for you, right? You should have the freedom to love who you want, and have the type of relationship you want and the intimacy you want. And if you are asexual that's in a relationship with sexual, make sure you're getting your cuddling needs met, because like I said, most asexuals, they need cuddling as a physical intimacy. And if you're not getting enough of that, you can feel like you're being neglected. And the last thing I want you to do is please the sexual person and neglect your own needs. So please speak up and, be the brave asexual you are always born to be. I hope you've liked this video. I hope you found it useful, helpful, insightful anyway. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with whoever you think may benefit. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what you think are the differences between sexual and asexual physical intimacy. Do you think that sexuals and asexuals can be together in a relationship with this in mind or not? Anyway, I'm going to love you, leave you for now. Always stay ace, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream. Take care, lots of love. Bye. Bye.